Welcome back. Sources are now telling Fox News that law enforcement officials do not expect to arrest President Trump today, as President Trump tweeted the other day, but an arraignment is possible next week. The former president wrote on Truth Social yesterday, this case is, quote, many years beyond the statute of limitations. Joining me right now is Harvard Law Professor Emeritus and the author of Get Trump, The Threat to Civil Liberties, Due Process, and Our Constitutional Rule of Law. Alan Dershowitz is here. Alan, it's great to have you. Congratulations on the book. This could not be more relevant, your book. Give us your sense of this attack, this latest attack on President Trump.
Well, when I was a young civil rights worker and I was training to go down south as an observer, our instructors told us, never spit on the sidewalk, don't put out a cigarette in the street, because you're being targeted by the sheriffs and the police, and they will turn your spitting on the street into a felony of destruction of property. We took that very seriously. And now District Attorney Bragg is following the precedent of the segregationist South and targeting Donald Trump for facts that aren't even misdemeanors. Here, he made a deal not to have himself and his family embarrassed, paid $130,000. Did they really expect him to enter it in his books as hush money paid to porn star to avoid revealing adulterous affair? Nobody in history has ever done that in a non-disclosure agreement. Of course he would say illegal. It's not even a misdemeanor. And then to say, but the reason he did it was really to avoid disclosure that he had committed a federal felony, that is the violation of campaign financing. It's the most stretched, the most absurd. I have to tell you, in 60 years of practicing criminal law, I have never seen a worse abuse of prosecutorial discretion. And the left, including today's New York Times, including CNN, they're all cheering this on as if it won't establish a terrible precedent, which today is used against Trump, tomorrow used against the Democrat, and the day after tomorrow used against your Uncle Charlie or your nephew. This is one of the most serious violations of the rule of law I've experienced in 60 years. And this comes from a Democrat, somebody who voted against Trump. This is not political. This is about how the rule of law is being destroyed by a zealous attempt to target somebody.
Yeah, and that is exactly why I wanted to hear from you, because you are an independent-minded legal scholar. Look, we all know how Alvin Bragg felt about Trump. Let's take a look at what he said while he was campaigning 2 years ago. Watch this.
I'm the candidate in the race who has the experience with Donald Trump. I was the chief deputy in the Attorney General's office. We sued the Trump administration over 100 times. I know how to litigate with him.
So there you go. He's telling us right there, let's go get Trump.
Well, and the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, who I like as a person, campaigned on exactly the words, get Trump. The title for my book, Get Trump, was not original with me. It comes from Letitia James' campaign slogan. She promised to get Trump. If she doesn't get him, she won't be reelected. The same thing is true with Bragg. It's like what the Soviet Union used to do when Lavrenti Beria, the head of the KGB, said to Stalin, show me the man and I'll find you the crime. Or South American dictators who said, for my friends, everything, from my enemies, the law. That's just not the way American law is supposed to operate. American law is supposed to have a crime, and then you look for who committed it, not first decide who you want to prosecute, and then rummage through the statute books to try to find some technical violation. It's worse than Al Capone, because in the Al Capone case, he actually committed tax violation. They went after him instead of murder. Here, there was no crime. They had to make it up. They had to combine a non-existent state misdemeanor, which is beyond the statute of limitations, to a federal felony, which was not prosecuted by the federal government, also beyond the statute of limitations, and they say 1 and 1 equals 11. That just isn't the way American justice works. And everybody should protest this. I'm not saying protest on the streets. Look, self-serving. Read my book, buy my book. That will help send a message to Bragg that you can't just get away with this. I'm going to continue to write about this, and I'm going to continue to tell the American public that their liberty is at risk when people can get away with this kind of prosecutorial abuse.
Yeah, good for you. But, Alan, they keep getting away with it, okay? That's why it keeps happening. You and I had this same discussion 4 years ago over the Russia collusion lie, when we both figured out that Russia collusion with Trump was a lie and made up by one political campaign to take down her opponent. And what happens? It goes viral across the world. The media drove it. And here we are again. Same thing. They did it with impeachment for Trump. They did it with the Biden laptop. They even did it with the origins of COVID-19, and the media ran with it.
And they get away with it because nobody is prepared to bring charges against lawyers who are abusing the process. Instead, those of us who in any way defended the Constitution on behalf of Trump, we're being investigated. We're being charged with bar complaints. The opposite ought to be true. People like the district attorney who abuse their discretion should be held responsible by bar associations. And unless they are, they're going to continue to do this. And then it's going to spread. It's going to become part of the precedents of American justice, that if you run for president, your opponent will try to find something on you. That's banana republic. That's not what the United States stands for.
That is absolutely right. Yep. Let me bring in Liz Peek. Go ahead, Liz.
Alan, you've made a really good case that this case is really illegitimate and very insubstantial. Do you think that the Republicans in Congress demanding that Alan Bragg come and talk to them, which has set off this howl of interference with the justice process, is a good idea or a bad idea? Do you think they risk having this thing just thrown out of court by making it even more political? Obstruction of justice is what the Democrats are saying.
I don't want to see the weaponization of justice against either party. I don't want to see that. I want to see people held to accountability for legal ethics. I taught legal ethics for 35 years at Harvard. I taught it with former prosecutors. We have never seen a case like this. Prosecutors have enormous power. As we know in New York, they say a grand jury, if the prosecutor wants, a grand jury will indict a ham sandwich. And in the very blue city of New York, a petty jury might convict a ham sandwich. And therefore, it's all up to prosecutors. They're the ones who have to protect citizens from abuse of the law. There are statutes that make everything criminal. The job of the prosecutor is to make sure there are precedents for this. They've never used this combination of statutes before to go after anybody. And if there's anybody out there who believes that they would prosecute somebody other than a presidential candidate, I have a bridge to Brooklyn that I will sell them. There is just no truth to this. This is targeted injustice.
Alan, you're a gem for this country. I want you to give us your reaction to this Michael Cohen situation, because the former legal advisor to Michael Cohen, Robert Costello, appeared for 2 hours yesterday before a Manhattan grand jury. Costello told reporters that Cohen cannot be trusted. Watch this.
I've listened to Michael Cohen stand in front of the courthouse and say things that are directly contrary to what he said to us. My obligation is to bring the truth to both the district attorney and to Trump's lawyers. That's exactly what I did. If they want to go after Donald Trump and they have solid evidence, so be it. But Michael Cohen is far from solid evidence. Lie, cheat, steal, shoot somebody, whatever it takes, I'm not going to jail. Well, he went to jail, and now he's on the revenge tour.
Well, he came across great on that, Alan. So was it that testimony, or was it the fact that they figured out they're actually helping Trump because it's in plain sight the way that they're politicizing this? Is that the reason we're not going to see him arrested today? What do you think?
No, I think the reason we're not seeing him arrested today is because Trump said he'd be arrested today, and Bragg didn't want his prediction to come true. The greatest gift prosecutors could give Trump would be to use Cohen as a witness. He would be the easiest witness to devastate and destroy and to hurt the credibility of the prosecution's case. They'd be much smarter to try to make the case without him, just as Trump would be much smarter not to deny that he had an affair with Stormy Daniels. I don't know whether he did or not, but the jury will not believe that denial, and that would affect the credibility of his case. So both sides would be smart by putting on less rather than more. I think that Trump will be indicted. I don't think he'll be perp-walked or handcuffed, because that would play into the hands of Trump's reelection campaign. He would make, if they do a mug shot of him and they make it public, that will be his campaign poster. that mugshot.
That's what I said.
And so
that's exactly
will
exactly what I
backfire.
said. Oh, my God. Alan, it's great to talk with you. Thanks so much. Please come back soon, Alan. Thank you.
I will. Thank you so much for having me.